All right, you moved to your New York City doing a fellowship. Is that right?
No, originally as a resident.
In New York City at
the Bellevue Hospital downtown, First Avenue and 28th Street. Then, after a year there, uptown to what?
168th Street.
No, 168th Street. So,
okay, and then is Alec born in New York City?
Yeah.
Alec very much born in New York
And
City.
can you talk a little bit about sort of Alec arriving on the scene, what life is like, where you're living, and stuff like that? We've already covered this.
I'll tell my side of the
Yeah,
story.
I'll hear your
Polly
side.
tells hers. Polly goes into labor. She was going to a doctor whose unfortunate name was Bish. I pronounce it correctly. It's Dr. Bish. Dr. Bish was Park Avenue, uptown New York, fashionable socialite obstetrician. Polly's in labor. It's a weekday, and a Thursday, and I'm scheduled to read a paper before the Interurban Club, and that was, a very nice star on one's report card if you're ambitious for academic medicine. Well, I went to Dr. Bradley and said that my wife was in labor and things were getting close, and I really felt I should be with her, and so on and so forth. And could I substitute sometime and read a paper later on, because I was all concerned about Polly. And he said no, that she was going to have the baby anyway in her own due time, and it was important for me to read the paper. So I read the paper thinking to myself, that goddamn son of a bitch I work for. And I do not remember a single thing about the paper or the meeting or anything else, but I remember being concerned about her.
And then so you're in an apartment, living in an apartment in New York City?
Stuyvesant.
And are you working at that moment? Are you working at that point?
Oh no, I
you stopped working, but you were working up until you were.
I was working for 2 years.
And Stuyvesant Town basically was a group of housing that was built for returning veterans. Isn't that right, or no?
It was a Metropolitan Life Insurance Company development.
It was hard to get into. I think I've heard your story, but
there was Peter Cooper, which was more difficult to get into. You had to have an income of $3,000 to get into Peter Cooper, and we didn't make it. And Stuyvesant Town, I think the rent was something like $60 a month, and it was a nice apartment. But your grandfather Smythe came to see it and said, "This looks like a well-run prison."
And you'd said to Roz once that you loved being pregnant. So describe sort of coming to New York, being pregnant, and all that stuff.
Yeah. I had a lot of experience with it.
Yes.
No, pregnancy was not a problem. I did very well, and I didn't have all this sickness and things that other people have, and I didn't have to go to bed for 3 months before the baby was born. I was healthy, which was great. But what I got to go, Chivas then goes back to the lab after he comes to see me and Alec. Goes back to the lab and puts in a call to the dean of Harvard College, which is Dad, to tell him that he's got a first grandson. Well, the lab explodes. You registered him at Harvard at 2 hours old.
He got in.
You got it. So you guess you didn't make that call for me.
So the apartment you're in how big was your apartment? What's it like getting all that gear for a baby at the stage, and kind of do you remember? Can you talk a little bit about sort of the routine and how your lives changed and all that?
My memory was we bought one baby carriage, and that we didn't really have it. We had a carry-on crib that strapped onto a bed, so we could take him out with us if we were invited out anywhere, and strap this fence onto a bed and put him in that. And I'm not sure we ever had a crib, did we? Well, I had made a little bassinet, and I'd sat on the floor at 9 months pregnant. I was through my job for about 2 months before he was born. And so when Tim was born, somebody had made a beautiful bassinet. And I sewed around a dotted Swiss and aligned it, and it was only big enough for a baby up to about 3 months. And I've forgotten what we did about a crib after that, but the baby carriage was very elegant.
But was it a 1 bedroom or a 2 bedroom? How big was the apartment?
1 bedroom.
So it's just
It was an L-shaped, small L-shaped living room with a tiny kitchen and 1 bedroom and a bath.
And so Alec was in a bassinet or something with you
Yes.
in the bedroom.
Or in the living room,
In the
maybe.
living room.
Yeah. And then I don't remember about a crib. What
No, we
he
had
spent a lot of time in that baby carriage. And
we spent because. I mean,
well,
this-
we went to
this-
to Cap Lejeune the next Christmas.
This is baby boom.
He was
years.
only nine months old.
So that virtually everybody, our friends were all young couples, and so everybody was having. I mean, literally everybody was having a baby. So that sort of nobody had babysitters, and you sort of carried it back and forth,
And you may have heard Rod Perkins, who was with the Republican Party and worked for who in Washington, and his little boy was born about the same time, and Joni and I used to babysit. I'd take roll Alec over into their apartment in the baby carriage, and leave him, and Joan would take care of him for an hour while I went and did. She'd do the same and bring Roddy over and leave him in our apartment.
And then the move to Camp Lejeune, is that the Korean War? Is that what's do you get drafted, or do you go? Are you called up, or are you in the reserves?
No, I would see. I go to medical school during World War II. Stayed in the Naval Reserve. At the beginning of the Korean War, the Naval Reserve had a pass that called me back, but didn't. And then as the war went on, it was a combination of things, and there were letters from Father in which he referred back to his restlessness about not being involved in the Army in World War I. But he had, let's see,
TB?
Both Austin and Francis had arrived, and Father had already had some fairly significant health issues. But somewhere along the line, his father, my grandfather, had told him, it's not that the Army needs you, it's that you need the Army. And Father pretty much made the same quote to me as I got increasingly anxious about that. So I went down to the Office of Naval Personnel to talk about being called up, because I was in the Naval Reserve and in active duty. And I went to the appropriate office, and I gave my serial number, both as an officer and as an enlisted man, because I'd been a corpsman. And the guy said he had no record of me. Well, that was a little alarming that the Navy had lost me. And, well, it became apparent that my record had already been pulled and was sitting on somebody's desk, and the orders were about to be written, which I didn't know. This was pure happenstance. So I bargained for a little bit about where I might get sent, and she got orders to report to Fleet Marine School, which was, you spent 6 weeks there, and then went to Korea. And so we were all set to do that, and then the orders were changed, and I was outside of the research laboratory.
At Camp Lejeune.
Camp Lejeune.
Yeah.
And what were you doing? And I remember some amusing stories, some of the stuff you were working on, or maybe it just sort of made into amusing stories, the stuff you were working on.
No, it was when I got there, Jim Maloney, who went on to be chairman of surgery at UCLA, was working with positive pressure respirators, which are the equivalent of today's piece of standard ICU equipment, which was then first coming along. And he had written a paper pointing out that with the positive endpoint respiration, that this is animal work, that it drove animals who were almost in trouble into shock. So this was important in Korea, where dialysis and respirator were introduced for the first time in military medicine. So the lab was assigned to do more with shock, and we were asked to compare intra-arterial with intravenous transfusion. We did stuff on frostbite. We did stuff on effect of landmines on types of boots.
Yeah, there's something story about boots, putting stuff in boots and blowing up the. Is there some story? All right. Junior Al can help me here.
In the winter in Korea, it was noted that the men who had on coal-protected boots, if they stepped on landmines, they had much less serious injury to their lower legs than if they had regular shoes on. Well, why was this true? Well, you took one look at the boot, and it was obvious why it was true, and that the boot was 2 layers with compressed air in between. So, in essence, it was there. But no, the Navy wanted objective data. So, I've told the story a dozen times. I put rats in boots.
This is the story I'm looking for.
The first time is I put marbles. I put rock candy in boots and blew it up. Well, needless to say, a load of dynamite sort of shivers rock candy. Then the next thing was marbles, and I stripped every dime store in Jacksonville, North Carolina, of the marbles, and kids had nothing to play with. Well, that didn't work. So then the next step was anesthetized rats, and we would x-ray them and count the number of fractures, and that became a reproducible thing. And very shortly proved that, if you put if you put your foot in a thermos bottle, basically you do a little bit better than if you put it in a leather sack.
Before we move to mummy, why would the Army not take somebody who is? You're on wards. Are you doing all academics at this point? Or are you actually treating patients?
No.
In New York?
No.
In New York.
Oh, in New York.
I am not, for all intents and purposes, seeing no patients. So
that's logical.
Well, Bob Lerb, who was then very much a power in American medicine, and Dr. Lerb and I got along with each other. I later learned that he was waving his arms around saying that I shouldn't be called up, when I had nothing to do with that.
But that's why they wouldn't take you and make you a medic in Korea, because it seems to me if you have an active doctor, why he send one to academics and one.
But you're in the Navy too, though. You're not going to
be. I'm in the Navy, so but that would have been with. The answer is that I had a year and a half of very extensive training in physiologic techniques, so I could walk into a research laboratory and be ready to go the next day.